All right. Well, hello and welcome to Transform Tuesday. Transform Tuesday is the webcast in which we talk about Alpha Transform. Typically, I give a short presentation at the beginning and then I open up for questions if there are any. So let's get started. Hi, my name is Dave McCormick. I'm VP of Product Management for Alpha Software. Sorry, I've been out last week, so I don't have a ton to show you this week, but I do have a little bit as I progress through putting together the official user's guide for Alpha Transform. Before we get started, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me and that you could see my screen. So if someone could just type into the questions box whether or not I'm coming through okay, that would be great. Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, so today we're going to take a look at some more of the overlooked features, and we're going to spend a little bit more time back in the management console of Transform Central. So last week, let me just pop over to the management console. Last week, we put together a building census form, and the purpose of this form was for a field inspector to be able to go through an apartment building and keep track of how many people are living in each apartment. Now, last week we were going over a couple of different scenarios and use cases behind this, and we showed you how someone here at the management console could enter in comments and then send a form back to the user back in the field so that the ticket could reopen on their phone and so that they could read the comment. And our comment was last week is, hey, check, apartment 2 is supposed to be vacant. I think the number of occupants is wrong. Some of the other things, though, that we put into this form were, let me just go into the designer and I'll show you the form, was just some very simple error checking. For example, we know that a number above, say, 11 is an unreasonable number of occupants to have in an apartment. Imagine these are small, like studio apartments or something like that. So when the person out in the field starts typing in their values into here, they will get an error. However, back in Management Console, we wanted to do another type of error checking. And that is when, let's say, the manager comes in here and reviews the records, maybe, instead of 12 being the magic number or 11 being the magic number of the maximum number of people that should be in an apartment, maybe they want to take a look carefully and see at, cases where they have, say, more than 5 people in an apartment. Maybe the person actually wrote down the wrong number. So that's just sort of our manufactured example of some sort of rudimentary error checking that you might do in the back office. So one way to do that would be to have to simply, download all of the forms that have been submitted by the field inspector, and then just go one at a time and click on them and go, okay, well, that's got 5 occupants, and I'll click on this one. That's also 5, and that's 1. That looks pretty good. Oh, wait, that's 8. So maybe this is one that, you want to flag and maybe, call up the inspector and say, are you sure that there are really 8 people living in this apartment? Now, clicking from row to row is fine if you have 9 records. That's not a big deal. But imagine if this had 100 records or more. You would find it pretty difficult to have to go click, 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 and chances are you might miss one. So what we can do here is right here in this list for the building census form, this forms list, we can actually add additional fields here to display. Now, right now, it just tells you the status, when it was created, changed, and of course, a username. But we want to know how many people, what the occupants field are. So we can actually add the occupants field here into this list, and we do it here by clicking on Select Fields. So I'm going to do that right now. We're going to scroll down, and we're going to say, I'm going to scroll down to my occupants field. I'm going to click on Occupants. And now you'll see that my view here has changed, and I'm capable now of seeing the occupants. So I can more easily look through this list and say, aha, there's one with 8 and there's one with 9. Okay, I've made my job a little bit easier, but there are 2 sort of issues behind that. One is it's a bigger view and it's going to take longer to scroll through. The second thing is that every time I refresh this list, my choices are lost as to which fields that I'd like to appear. I'm sorry, not refresh this list. Every time I choose this type of form. So let me say I chose this type again, and it's already forgotten that I've selected fields here. So select fields is really just something you're going to do temporarily, but if it's something you're going to do over and over again, it might be better some way to list out, say, the number of occupants in another column, like, say, this details column. And as it turns out, you can do that. In fact, you can add all kinds of HTML and stuff here to this details column. So you're probably wondering, where do you do that? So I'm going to show you. We do that back here in Designer. So back in Designer, I have my building census form open. Oh, this is my fields list. So I'm just going to go back to the properties for this form. And I'm going to scroll down in properties until I get to the advanced section. For you, you might find this closed. You might need to click this little arrow marker to open it back up again. And as you come down here, you'll see there are a couple of things that we can do. We've talked about form definitions before. This is where you can trade form definitions with other people by getting it in raw JSON format. I know we've talked about heading templates, although I think we're going to go back into that in a future week. But here we're going to go into listing template. So the listing template actually dictates what's going to appear in that details column back on Management Console. So let me give you just a real simple example. Let's say we're just going to put in some static text. We're going to say, hello world. Now back here on the Management Console, I'm going to click off this field and I'm going to save my changes, of course. Okay, now we're back in Management Console. And you'll notice nothing here has changed. And you're probably thinking, oh, that's because you didn't refresh. But if you refresh, you'll see that's not going to work. And I'll tell you why in a second. Because refreshing actually just uploads the data, downloads new data, refreshes the data behind the form. It doesn't refresh the form definition itself. To refresh the form definition itself in this view, what you need to do is you need to go to Choose Type. And even though we're using the same type, we're not choosing a different type, we need to refresh it. So I can go right down here to where it says refresh here at the bottom of this list. I'm going to click refresh. And then you'll see that I have in my details section, hello world. I've now updated that details section. All right, that's good, but kind of useless. Let's in fact put in the apartment number or the occupant's number there. So I'm going to go to Designer. And I can use what's called the TPL Templating Format. And there is documentation on this, which you can actually find up here in Help. So I'm just going to show you a real simple example. I happen to know that the name of the field that I want is occupants. So the TPL syntax for that is hashtag occupants. And because I probably want to put a nice label in front of this, occupants, and a space, and there we go. And now when I go back, let me go ahead and click off here and save these changes. Now when I go into Management Console, and I choose type, and I refresh the definition of the form, in other words, refresh the form type, aha, I've done something wrong. What have I done wrong? All right, it worked in rehearsal. I suspect I probably just typed in the field name wrong. Let me just take a look. Occupants. Occupants is the name of the field. Command C. Let me head back over here. By the way, if this doesn't work, I have a pasted one that I can use. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm showing you bad TPL syntax. Bad Dave. TPL syntax needs to go into curly braces. So it's going to be curly braces, hashtag, then the name of the field. And we're going to click off of here. We're going to save that again. By putting stuff in the curly braces, that's what should do it. Now when I'm here, I can go back to choose type. I can refresh this list again. Aha, there we go. And now it's all here in the details section. All right, so far so good. It's easier to scan through, but let's make it a little bit better still. With TPL, you can do more templating than just simply HTML and inserting field names. You can also do if-thens, for example. And the example that I'm going to give you here is, let me just pop back over here. to pop back over here, is one that I created earlier. I'll go through how this works in a second, but let me just, actually, I'll go over how it works right now, and then we'll show you the end results. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste this into the listing template. And I know this is rather small, so let me just show it to you here in my notepad, but I'm just going to make it bigger. I think I can just zoom in. Actually, maybe I could just hit Control Plus. Maybe that's supported. Nope. View. Let me just zoom in a few more times so that you can read my stuff here. Text display. Zoom in. Actually, it's probably just easier if I do this in Word. Okay, we're going to make this really big. Oops. Hang on a moment. Okay, we'll make this like, I don't know, 36 point type. All right, here we go. Great. Okay, so here's the TPL that I've entered in for the listing template. I've used the if statement here. So I said if occupants are greater than 8, then, and then after that I have an end if. And what this basically means is that anything that, if this condition occurs, I want you to display this HTML that's going to be here. And all I've done is I've created a div. I've set the background color of that div to red. I've made the text color white. I made it a fairly big font, and I've aligned the text to the center. And I put in the words check occupancy. So this will be more like a flag rather than showing you the number of occupants that are there in the listing template. So let's go back and I'll show you how that works. I'm going to go ahead and click Save Changes. Okay. And we'll go back to the management console. And again, we're going to need to refresh the form type, not the form data. So we're going to go to Choose Type, and we're going to click Refresh. And then I'm going to close it. And then you'll see, aha, it says check occupancy for this one record. So this could make it considerably easier for someone who's scanning through, let's say, hundreds of records and just to find the one that's got the error in it. And of course, you could do, this is HTML, you can do almost anything with it that you like. Now, Alpha Transform and TPL do make some limitations on what you are allowed to do with the HTML that's put in there. So there are a few restrictions that you'll need to read about if you decide, for example, to include an image. And the reason is that, you know, when you start including references to outside URLs, there are some security concerns. So that is the reason that we've locked that down a bit. But that is covered in the documentation, and you can find the documentation actually built right into Alpha Transform. Instead of this help link, actually, let's go back to, let me find that where that is for you. You can find that. Let's say if you go to Designer, for example, and you click on Help, you're going to scroll down till you get to TPL Templating, and then it gives you some examples here of how TPL templating works. So that is today's presentation. I don't know if there are any questions. I see that Sarah has joined us. Let me go ahead and make you a panelist here. And if there are any questions, now would be the time to ask them. Okay. Right. Can you filter the management console list to show only those forms with an occupancy greater than a certain number? That is a great question, and the answer is no. Right now, I know that's super limiting. Right now, the management console is limiting. We are working on this as we speak. But right now, the order in which you see these is always going to be in the order in which they were entered, and you're always going to see all of them. There is no actual find command or filter command. Limiting, yes, I know, but those features will be added here to Transform really quite shortly, so stay tuned. Can forms show fields side by side landscape instead of up and down? The answer is yes, they can in the newest release of Alpha Transform. And Sarah, are you there by any chance?
I am here.
I believe that you know the secret website that we can give a demonstration of that in?
I do. Do you want me to
Excellent.
send that to you?
Yes, or you could do the demo yourself if you don't mind. Put together a quick, either way, doesn't make a difference.
Let me look it up for you real quick.
I see. So a new version of Alpha Transform is coming out really shortly. Yeah, within a week or so. And I've got a demo site here, which we'll see if we can find it. And in the new, oh, you know what? We don't even have to do it that way. I actually have pictures of what it looks like. Let's scroll down here. So the question was, can you show forms side by side in landscape instead of just up and down? And the answer is yes, you can. In previous versions, or actually even in the current version until the latest release comes out, you could only show one field per row. So let me just give you an example. Here's contact, here's equipment, here's power supply. That's fine on a phone. But when you start talking about tablets, and a lot of people are using tablets to use Alpha Transform, it's sort of limiting to just have one field on a form. You're not using the real estate effectively on the tablet. So things like city, state, country, you might want to have three of those on one line. So in the next version, when coming very shortly of Alpha Transform, we are going to have this ability right here. We're going to have the ability to build what we called sections. So a section allows you to specify how many columns you would like and on what size screen. So small is for a small form factor phone. Think about an iPhone 5. Medium is for a phone like an iPhone 5 that happens to be, say, in landscape mode. Large is for a tablet, and then there's even a bigger one that's not listed here that is for a desktop web sort of size view. Now, basically, what it allows you to do is allows you to set out a certain type of grid. You can do 1x3s, you can do 2x2s, and here's an example of here we've laid out a couple of stopwatch controls in this one section, and then we put another section next to that section. So the amount of control that you have is going to be a lot better with this new multi-column options. And again, this is coming out very shortly. If it's not out this week, I suspect it will be out next week. Okay. Are there any other questions? Well, that looks like it. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. If you do have future questions, go ahead and send them to tfservice, as in transform service, at alphasoftware.com. It's monitored by a team of people. We're happy to get back to you. If you would like the link for the video library of Transform Tuesdays, go ahead and send an email also to tfservice, or you could see it in the invitation that I sent you all today. Thanks again, and hope to see you next Tuesday. Take care and goodbye.